I never thought I'd feel so invisible in my own home. The creak of the floorboards under my feet used to be comforting, familiar, like the house itself was whispering memories back to me. But now, it felt alien, cold. The smell of fresh paint and lingering dust made my stomach twist. I was standing in the living room, staring at the for sale sign my own son had put up without a word to me. I could hear his voice in my head, all smooth charm and careless confidence, telling his friends he'd handled it, as if he had the right to sell the place that held my life. My late husband's laugh echoing in the hallways, my son's first steps across the hardwood floors. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, tasting iron on my tongue. But anger wasn't all I felt. There was something else simmering, a quiet, calculating thrill, because I knew a secret he didn't. I was ready to play the hand he had dealt me, but on my terms. I watched from the shadows as buyers walked through my home that I barely recognized anymore. The walls were stripped of family photos. My favorite armchair moved to the corner like it didn't belong. I could hear them whisper, "Charming, but could use some updating." And I laughed quietly to myself. Updating. My son had no idea that the one who could truly decide the fate of this house was standing right there, invisible. I thought about the audacity it took for him to sign those papers without a word to me. 38 years of memories, love, and late-night talks over spilled tea. Gone, he assumed. He'd even bragged about the profit he expected, completely missing the look on my face whenever he mentioned it. I pretended to be hurt, silent, but behind the smile, a plan was forming. I knew the market, the agents, the paperwork. I'd been quietly following every step of the sale, learning the buyer's name, the closing date, even the hidden contingencies. Every time he boasted to his friends, I filed it away like ammunition. It wasn't just about getting the house back. It was about making him realize that underestimating me had been his biggest mistake. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. The house smelled faintly of varnish and cleaning supplies. My fingers traced the edge of the table, worn smooth from decades of dinners, homework, and late-night conversations. I pictured my son walking in, expecting a proud smile and thanks for taking care of business. Instead, he would find me smiling, not the forgiving mother, but the one who had quietly taken control of everything. By the time the closing day arrived, I had become both ghost and master of this game. I wore my calm like armor, let him bask in his imagined victory. He didn't see the emails I'd sent, the checks I'd written, the subtle legal maneuvers that made me the only one who could claim the property. And when the moment came, when the papers were signed and the final pen touched the contract, I stepped forward. My name on the buyer line. The expression on his face was a mixture of disbelief, horror, and something deeper, realization. He had sold me my own house without even knowing it. I let him stew in that moment, letting the silence stretch until it felt like it might break him. And then I said, quietly, deliberately, "Surprise, you should know better than to think your mother is powerless. The house was mine again, and this time I would never be invisible here, nor anywhere else he thought he could control." He stood frozen in the doorway, hands shaking, mouth opening and closing like he was searching for words that didn't exist. The realization hit him slower than it should have. He had underestimated me, and now the weight of his arrogance pressed down on him like a physical thing. I could see the tight line of his jaw, the nervous twitch in his eye. He wanted to yell, to accuse, to demand an explanation, but he couldn't. Not yet. I walked past him, barefoot on the familiar hardwood, feeling the warmth of the floors under my feet, smelling the faint mix of varnish, coffee, and the lingering scent of my late husband's cologne that the house had somehow retained. Each step was deliberate, measured. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, slow and steady, every beat reminding me that I had won without a fight, without raising my voice. "You really thought I wouldn't notice?" I said finally, voice calm, almost soft, but carrying the weight of every moment he had ignored me. He swallowed hard, and I could see the shame rising on his face, the shock giving way to guilt. He had treated me like a child while scheming behind my back, thinking his charm and his smarts would outplay decades of my experience. I turned toward the living room, toward the windows where sunlight streamed across the furniture I had chosen, the rugs I had picked, the walls that held every memory of laughter and tears. This house, this is our home, I said, and you don't get to sell what isn't yours to sell. He followed me, voice finally coming out in a hoarse whisper. Mom, you didn't mean to include me. You didn't think I'd notice. You didn't think I'd care. I stopped and faced him, letting him see every inch of my anger, my hurt, my quiet triumph. You forgot one thing. I am always paying attention, and I don't let anyone, especially not my own child, take what belongs to me. For a long moment he just stared, and I felt a strange mixture of pity and amusement. He was still my son, but the naive, arrogant boy who had thought he could outsmart me was gone. In his place was someone who had learned, painfully and publicly, that underestimating me came at a cost. I finally stepped closer, softening slightly, letting the warmth of my presence reach him. I wanted you to see this moment, to feel what it's like when the person you think is powerless quietly takes back control. You'll remember this, I promise. And as he sank into the couch, head in his hands, the house around us felt alive again. Every creak, every sigh of the floorboards, every flicker of sunlight through the curtains seemed to hum with my victory. I had done more than reclaim a house. I had reminded him and myself of something stronger than anger, power, patience, and the quiet, unshakable certainty that I would never be invisible. That night, I sat in the kitchen with a fresh cup of tea, finally tasting it warm, letting the steam curl around my face. I could hear him moving softly upstairs, the weight of his guilt pressing on him, but I didn't feel satisfaction in cruelty. I felt satisfaction in truth, in justice, in reclaiming not just my house, but my place in the story of my own life. The next morning, he tried to act normal, but I could see through it immediately. He hovered in the kitchen, careful not to touch anything, nervously sipping coffee, as if the cup itself might betray him. His usual confidence was gone, replaced with something brittle and uncertain. I didn't rush to confront him. There was a satisfaction in watching him squirm, in letting him navigate the awkwardness he had brought upon himself. I wanted to apologize, he said finally, voice low, hesitant. I didn't know it would. You didn't think, I interrupted gently, letting the words linger like a quiet echo in the room. You didn't think because you assumed I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't act. That's where you went wrong. I could see him flinch, the truth hitting him like a hard slap he couldn't deflect. He looked down, tracing the rim of his mug with a shaking finger. I thought I was helping. I thought I was saving us money, making things easier. His voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw real regret, not just embarrassment. I walked past him, placing my hand on the counter, feeling the warmth of the wood beneath my palm. You thought. That's the problem with thinking for others without listening. This house isn't just wood and nails. It's memory. It's family. And you can't sell that without asking me. For a long while we were silent. The sunlight shifted across the kitchen, highlighting dust motes dancing lazily in the air. I wanted him to feel it, the weight of what he'd tried to take, the consequences of ignoring me. And slowly, I saw the beginnings of understanding in his eyes. I get it now, he whispered, voice almost broken. I really messed up. Yes, I said softly, though not without firmness. You did, and you'll remember this. Not just today, but every time you think about doing something behind someone's back. Power isn't about what you can take. It's about what you respect. And you disrespected me. He nodded, swallowing hard, finally meeting my eyes. I'm sorry, Mom, truly. I let the moment linger. The quiet tension between us, a lesson neither of us would forget. Then with a slow smile, I softened. You're forgiven, but don't forget what happened here. Not the humiliation, not the lesson. Remember that actions have consequences, and sometimes the person you think is powerless is the one who's quietly winning. He nodded again, more firmly this time, and for the first time in days, I felt the house breathe with relief. My home was back. My authority was back. And in that fragile, tentative way, the relationship with my son began to rebuild, not on arrogance or assumptions, but on honesty and respect. Word of what had happened started to leak, not by me, but through whispers among family friends and neighbors who had watched the drama unfold. My son's friends tried to act supportive, but there was a visible shift in their eyes when they saw him walk past with that guilty slump in his shoulders. The quiet whispers of, "Did you hear what happened?" followed him like a shadow, a reminder that his arrogance had consequences beyond the walls of our house. I went about my days as usual, letting the house reclaim its life under my care. The smell of fresh-baked bread filled the kitchen in the mornings. My favorite jazz records spun softly in the living room, their warm notes filling spaces that had felt empty since the sale attempt. Yet everywhere I went, I could see it. People noticing, people talking. My son's mistake had become public, and I had no need to intervene. The truth was enough. He came to me that afternoon, face pale, hands gripping the counter as if steadying himself. "Mom, everyone knows now. At work, at the coffee shop, even Aunt Linda texted me about it." I leaned against the counter, calm, letting the quiet authority I had reclaimed settle between us. "And how does it feel?" I asked, voice steady, eyes watching him like a hawk observing prey that had finally learned caution. He swallowed hard, humiliating. I never realized how much I underestimated you." "Good," I said simply. "Humiliation has its lessons, but pride doesn't come back so easily. Let it sink in. Let it teach you to listen, to respect, to think beyond what's convenient for you." There was a long pause. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting golden streaks across the hardwood floors. I could see the tension in him beginning to ease, not because he had fixed things, but because he had to reckon with the consequences. I could feel the power shifting again, quietly, firmly, like the house itself approving my decisions. Later that evening, I walked through the living room, touching the walls where old family photos had been restored, inhaling the scent of furniture polish mixed with lingering memories. My son trailed behind me, hesitant but present, starting to understand that some lessons couldn't be taught in anger. They had to be experienced. "You've made your point," he said finally, voice small. I'll be more careful. I promise." I smiled, not with condescension, but with quiet authority. "Yes, promise. And remember, it's not about winning. It's about respect, about understanding the weight of your actions. That's the lesson this house taught you." By the time night fell, the house hummed with restored energy. I sat in my armchair, listening to the soft creak of the floors and the distant city noises outside. The world had noticed my victory, and my son had noticed it too. But more importantly, he had noticed me, finally, truly, and that recognition was worth more than any profit he had imagined. The days that followed were quieter, but the tension lingered like a faint hum beneath normal life. My son stayed close, helping with small chores, carrying boxes, asking questions he never would have before. There was humility in his actions now, a recognition of boundaries he had ignored. I watched him, careful not to smile too broadly, savoring the subtle shift in our relationship. One evening, as the sun spilled gold across the living room, he approached me with a hesitant expression. "Mom, can we talk?" I set down the mug I'd been holding, steam curling between us. "Of course." He took a deep breath, fingers curling around the edge of the couch. I want to say thank you, not just for forgiving me, but for showing me how serious it is to underestimate someone, especially you. I feel like I've learned something I won't forget." I studied his face, seeing the sincerity in the way his eyes met mine, the way his shoulders relaxed after days of guilt and tension. I nodded slowly. "I'm glad. But remember, this isn't just about houses or money. It's about respect, about understanding the impact of your actions on the people you love. That lesson doesn't end here. It follows you through life." He nodded again, more firmly this time. "I get it. I really do." There was a quiet pause. the kind that stretches across the space between apology and understanding. I reached out, resting a hand gently on his arm. "I've always believed in you," I said softly, "even when you make mistakes. But believing isn't the same as letting you take what's mine, or what belongs to us, without consequences. That's the difference." He smiled faintly, the first true smile in days, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The house wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours again, in a way that respected both of our places in its story. I could smell the faint aroma of my evening tea, hear the soft hum of the city outside, feel the warmth of my son's presence near me. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary. Later, as I walked through the rooms I had reclaimed, I touched the walls, ran my fingers across the armrests of the chairs, breathed in the familiar scents, and felt a deep sense of ownership, not just of the house, but of the life I had built, the family I had nurtured, and the respect I had quietly demanded and reclaimed. My son followed at a respectful distance, carrying a box of old books I had forgotten I owned. I glanced back at him and smiled. "You did well today," I said, voice gentle. "Keep learning, keep paying attention. That's the most valuable thing anyone can do." And for the first time since the sale attempt, the house felt alive again. Not just walls and furniture, but heart, memory, and the quiet, undeniable power of a mother who had refused to be invisible. The morning sun poured through the windows, warming the house in a way that felt like a promise. I moved through each room slowly, savoring the quiet hum of life returning. My son was in the kitchen washing dishes without being asked, the clink of plates and water running through the sink sounding almost musical. He glanced up and caught my eye, a small, genuine smile tugging at his lips. "You know," he said softly, "I think I finally understand. It wasn't just about the house, was it?" I shook my head, smiling, feeling the weight of every tense, silent moment lift. No, it was about respect, awareness, and knowing that actions have consequences. And sometimes the person you think can't fight back is the one quietly running the whole game. He laughed, a nervous, relieved sound that filled the space between us. "Yeah, I get that now. I really do." I moved closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Good, because life doesn't forgive ignorance as easily as I do." The day passed with small gestures of reconciliation. He carried boxes back to the attic. We unpacked old photo albums, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt like home again. Not just mine, but ours. The walls echoed with laughter, soft and easy, rather than tension or resentment. I could smell the faint aroma of coffee, hear the hum of the refrigerator, and feel the warmth of sunbeams on my skin. Each moment reminded me that the house wasn't just a structure. It was memory, power, and love. Later, as the evening settled in, I stood on the front porch, watching the sun dip behind the neighborhood rooftops. My son joined me silently, leaning on the railing. For a long while, we watched the sky change colors, letting the silence speak for both of us. Finally, I turned to him. "I hope you've learned something important from all this," I said. He nodded, eyes serious. "I have, and I hope I never make a mistake like this again." I smiled, a deep, satisfied smile, feeling the full circle of triumph. The house was mine again, yes, but more than that, my authority, my voice, my presence had been recognized. My son had learned humility, respect, and the quiet strength of a mother who would always protect what mattered most. As night fell, I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, and felt the house settle around us like a long-lost friend. The lights reflected softly on the walls. The air smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood, and I knew, without a doubt, that I had not only reclaimed a house, I had reclaimed my place, my power, and my peace. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly at home.